Welcome back to the Nassman Hockey Podcast after a week off. And coincidentally, we missed our 3-year anniversary of the show, of our first episode. So thank you, everybody, for coming along on this journey with us. I know we've kind of been a little sappy lately for a bunch of different reasons, but I don't know. It seems weird. That's a big milestone. It's season 4 of the show, because we've had 4 seasons since we've been of Islander hockey since we started the show and the pandemic and different things. But it's been a journey. It's a lot of ebbs and flow and content creation. I know people get sick of hearing that. I get sick of hearing that, but it's difficult. James, did you think we'd get this far? Do you think we'd be season 4, 143 episodes in?
Yeah, I did. There was a point where I was like, this is gonna take us to the moon. So I definitely felt like we were gonna get here, but like looking back on what it took to get here and how much work we put into it, like it's time consuming. Like this isn't, you can't just sit down and like hit record and like that's it. Like you're good to go. Talk for a few minutes and then like it's done. Like there's prep, there's post recording work to be done, and there's just a lot goes into it. It's definitely consuming, but it's worth it. Like I love doing this. Like I look forward to sitting down and just talking about this stuff for an hour or so.
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm not writing, I definitely look forward to this more than I was when I was doing a lot of different Islanders stuff. So I definitely, like I said, I look forward to this a little bit more. It's easier to sit down and I write the script before the notes or whatever. It is nice. I wasn't sure how long we'd go. 3 years is a long time to do anything. We did think it was going to take us to the moon. We had a really big start. The Islanders were doing really well and playoff runs, and joining the Hockey Podcast Network was really great. They've been amazing partners. Isles Fix kind of coming on in season 4 or the beginning of season 4, maybe it was last year. I can't even remember. It's been almost a year with them as well, and they've been great partners. Make sure you check out their book, Joe Buono's book, Islanders A to Z. Islanders just tweeted about it, which is really sick that he's got that partnership together, and I'm proud of that. It seems like the Islanders community just continues to do kind of that homegrown thing, and that relationship that the team has with the community and the fans and the media and everything is amazing. Like I don't know other teams that are doing that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, you're right. And just congrats to Joe and to I forget the graphic designer's name. I know his name on Twitter is at graphics. I think his name is also Joe. Actually, if now that I'm thinking about it, uh, congrats to both Joes for writing and creating this really fantastic book. He sent me a copy. I actually have it sitting right here, and he's going to come on the show and talk about it.
We should do that soon.
Yeah, it's a little blurry because I got this blur effect on, but Islanders A to Z. He sent me a copy. Really gracious of him to do. Tell you what, I opened it up and you know I had my daughter on my lap and 7 months old. The images just popped to her and she was just like, "Oh, this is like flapping her arms like this is great. Give me more of this." Um,
That's
so
cool.
tell you what, like if you're an Islander fan and you're looking to get your kids into the Islanders, this is a great segue for sure.
That's awesome. But before we get into some Islander hockey, I know you want to talk about your tattoos. You were getting a lot of attention with your I don't even know whatever cartoon character
Oh, be
action
nice.
figure. I honestly don't know I don't know what it is. Is it Dragon
All
Ball
right.
Z? No.
No, 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 no. I have one of those already. But no, I growing up was a huge Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan.
Oh, right. It
Um
was Power Rangers.
it was, and huge fan growing up. And recently Boom Studios, which is a comic book publishing company, has created this more adult-like version of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers via comic books. Um, Same characters and everything with some new additions, right? and
Is
the
there a Green
character.
Ranger? We need to know.
Yes, yes.
He's
There's
b
a Green
they're
Ranger.
they're back.
There's there. Yeah, no, it's the original. The
Well,
original.
they that run alright, so we're going back here. Back to when they would cut to I don't know if there's a Japanese version or
Yeah,
some
that was
other
that
version,
was it was
and
first.
it would kind of cut in between where, like, there
Yeah,
were the American actors, and then it would cut to these other weird scenes where they would do, like, the actual, like, flips and stuff, and then
yeah. So
it
it's
was really funny is the quality of the video would
so
change,
different.
like, very, very obviously
Right,
would
because
change.
the thing is the original tapings of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in Japan were it began in like the late 1980s, and the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the American version, came over to this side of the pond in the early 90s. I believe it started in 95, so mid 90s, started in 95. And all the choreography of like the fight scenes, at least in the early goings of the show, were the Japanese versions, and
I
everything with
still
the helmet.
remember those, like, they were
Yeah,
in these gray mesh suits and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
like
Yeah. So long story longer. The comic book version that they've made has brought back the original American cast, via comic book, and added some new characters. And one of the characters, there's a Green Ranger, there's a White Ranger, and then there is a character called Lord Draken, who's like a fuse of the Green and the White Ranger, and he's evil. And he just looks so badass. I love the design, and he's a dark character. It's a little more adult like the comic book, and there's just some really cool storylines that they've embedded into the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that like I the TV show would never go in this direction, and the fact that the comic book did, it just like grabbed me right away. I actually have issue number 0, the first issue that ever came out of this comic book line. In still in the plastic. I won't open it. There was like variant covers of it. I got like the special edition Green Ranger variant cover. Yeah, super nerd right now, but like I love that stuff.
yeah,
So
that's
on
cool. It's
my
like a
leg,
throwback '90s thing.
yeah, I love it. So like on my leg this weekend, I got one of the famous images of Lord Draken just sitting on his throne because at some point, he takes over the morphing grid, and that's like how the Power Rangers are connected and they can morph and stuff like that, and they get their powers through. And he takes over the morphing grid, and the rest of the world in turn, and he's sitting on his throne. It's just a really solid looking image that I thought would look really badass on my shin, and I got it, and it's like from my ankle to like my kneecap. It's huge.
I was gonna say it looked quite large.
Yeah, it's big.
Do you have
My
another piece?
artist
Do you ha Go ahead.
on the yeah, on the back of like mirroring that, I have the original or one of the original bad guys from the TV show who's also in the comic book, Lord Zed. So I'm going with like an evil dark theme here on my leg. Also on his throne. I thought it was just a really cool thing to do to have them mirroring each other, two of like the big bads of the comic book and TV show. Um, just mirroring each other there. So uh yeah, really just going with like a dark theme there.
Interesting. Who plays the big face on the TV screen in the comic book? Like, does that character still exist?
Oh, Zordon, you're talking about.
Zordon. Gun to my head, would never have remembered that.
Do you know who played Zordon originally?
Was it like James Earl Jones? Because he always like just because that's a weird guess.
No. No. Brian
I've
Cranston.
no kidding. They like
Yep. Brian
really
Cranston was in. Yep, he was. Not only was he Zordon, but he was also multiple monsters in costume that the Power Rangers would fight. That was like one of his original gigs, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
for those of you that don't know, he's the Breaking Bad guy, or
Yeah.
earlier than that, the Malcolm in the Middle
Malcolm
dad.
in the Middle. Yep.
So, which is interesting.
Yep.
Um, I gotta go back. I would never have placed that. I would
He's
never have
so
made that connection.
he's yeah, it's funny like how because there was a couple of Zordons he like wasn't the first. But he was one of them, and yeah, it was very when I found out too, I was like, "Oh my god, I did not know that." So, cool stuff. Where
Wow, that's a cool piece of, trivia for sure. I
Yeah,
don't know that anyone would know. That might that's like I wonder if that's his earliest role. Like, that must
yeah.
predate or the same time as Malcolm in the Middle. I honestly don't know when that show came out either. I feel like it was just always existed in my life. So I have no idea. Anyway, we're like 10 minutes in. We gotta talk about some Islander stuff here. So, if you're watching the show on YouTube, you'll notice I'm in full 1993 mode in my Islanders gear. Got my Kasparaitis jersey on, got my ridiculous hat that doesn't really quite fit right. I don't know if people's heads were different in the early 90s. It's just a weird shape. It just like doesn't fit. I don't like a hat that's too deep, but this is very, very shallow and it like falls off my head. Um, but anyway, there's a reason for this. It's because this team, this current Islanders team, fighting for a playoff spot, and we're not going to go too deep into this. I do want to touch on this is foreboding for our conversation later, but I think this team's a lot like that '93 team, where there's a couple of stars. Obviously, like Glenn Healy is not Ilya Sorokin. I don't think you can compare them or Kelly Rudy. I forget which one. Um, but this team's a lot like them. They're scrappy. They have a couple really good players. Um, and they really could be a team that kind of makes some noise unexpectedly. So that team went all the way to the conference finals, eventually losing to the Cup champions that year at Montreal Canadiens. But they knock off the Penguins, who were defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. So this team reminds me of them. I don't know where they finished, but that's why I'm all in my garb here. Um, but on to this year's Islanders, on to fully 30 years later. That hurt to say. 30 years later, we're a week past the trade deadline, or a little bit less than a week past the trade deadline. We didn't have a show last week. Thank you for your patience in coming back. I was traveling and scheduling, and we're back, and who cares? So I do want to talk about that Islanders and kind of otherwise. There was a really big exodus from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference. There's a lot of skill, and the West was wide open, I think, anyway. But there was a lot of skill that left the Western Conference and came to the East, which was already tight. Like the wild card race is tight, but even at the top of the divisions, like they're they're fighting for home ice advantage. Like I don't think Tampa or Toronto are going to catch Boston, but the Metro division's kind of open. Like the Rangers and Devils could go on a streak here at the end of the season, 20 or so games remaining, and maybe catch the Hurricanes. So they might be fighting for playing one of the wild card seeds, which would be exciting if the Islanders are one of them, and they get to play who's ever in the Metro. But what do you think about that exodus from the Western Conference of all that talent?
I think it was just like, the West was, or I guess the trades with the West were just a casualty of what some of the teams are dealing with over there. Like the Avalanche, right? They were expected to maybe go get like a second line center, but they knew Gabriel Landeskog was coming back, and his timetable is a little bit fuzzy, so they don't know what their money situation is going to look like. The Wild are, cap strapped because they have like $14 million between Suter and Parise buyouts, and it's only growing next year. So they knew they couldn't take on any more money, and in fact, they brokered deals instead to just accrue capital. Um, so these teams are dealing with different situations than what the teams in the East are dealing with. And some of them out there too. I don't know. Maybe they felt the better play for them was to not do anything overzealous for them that would put them in a hole. I know, like LA did a pretty big move where they got Korpisalo and Gavrikov, and they wound up trading Jonathan Quick. By the way, um,
What do you think of that?
great.
Did you think they did them dirty, or is it just the
Yes,
yeah? This is just what you got to do.
The thing is, like,
or
I
both.
get both sides. Like, I get both sides of that, right? Like, I get, like, this is a business. You have to do what you have to do. However, the Kings just came off of a win where Anze Kopitar, who, by the way, won the Stanley Cup with Jonathan Quick multiple times, scored 4 goals that game. The game ends. The team gets on the bus, and they call Jonathan Quick off the bus to be like, "Hey, by the way, we traded you, and now you gotta travel back to LA," because I think they were where, I forget where they were. It might have been like Calgary. They were in Calgary for a game, and they had to travel back together and be like, "Yeah, you. By the way, you got traded." Like, I don't know. I the timing was weird for me. Like, if you're gonna do something like that to a guy like Jonathan Quick, who helped bring the first two Stanley Cups to Los Angeles, like you anticipate his number being retired there. Dustin Brown gets a statue. You anticipate a statue coming for Jonathan Quick, the Stanley Cup, the only Stanley Cup winning goaltender for the Los Angeles Kings. Like, you expect him to be honored as a king for the rest of his life. So you would have
He is
thought that
so
maybe
bad this year, though. Like, and
oh
they're
no,
second
I
in the Pacific.
agree. I
Like, it
agree.
needed to be done. I think
I
he
think
had the it's crazy that he didn't expect it, like,
that's
with how much
exactly
was
it.
like, yes, you can be mad all you want. I think that's perfectly valid. But, like, he knows he wasn't good. Like, he's not looking behind him every game 3 or 4 times a game and thinking, "This is going well." You
No,
don't have to look at the numbers, like, he's for how many times he's digging the puck out of the net. You gotta know that you're not doing well.
no, I agree, and the thing is too, like, you look at the standings, Vegas and LA can meet each other in the playoffs because what ends up happening is Quick says to Columbus, "I'm not staying here. There's no way," and because they're horrible, and he doesn't want to be in that situation. So Vegas turns around and says, "Well, we need goaltending," and that's a rival to the Los Angeles Kings. So could you imagine if these two face off in the playoffs? Like, Jonathan Quick is gonna, in my opinion, be very spiteful and turn on his 2012 self and shut this team out. Like, I could easily see something like that happening.
It'd be really interesting. I'm trying to look at the divisions that they're in. Yeah, it's entirely possible if Edmonton turns it on, they're tied in games played, but 4 points behind Los Angeles. They could easily swap places, and then Vegas might, it depends on where everything shakes out. They could play each other in the first round. It could be that soon. Um, but yeah, I listened to a lot of stuff. I was traveling last week, so I had a little bit of time. So I was listening to all the recaps and everything and leading up to it, and including some stuff this week. I'm with you. I understand both sides of it. Like I said, I think you could be upset and mad, but you had to have expected it. Um, that was one of the rare trades. Like, he went to the East and then he came back, and I don't want to call that an exodus of skill, because he certainly. It's interesting that Vegas even had the room. I don't know what they had to do, and I know Mark Stone's out, and I don't know how long, but it's they don't know. They always find a way with the dollars and cents. They're the lightning of the West, that they just kind of LTIR their way to making that all make sense. But Horvat kind of kicked that
Which
off.
you're correct. Before we hit that real quick, I wanted to ask you about, did you see the memo that went out to the league in the days leading to the trade deadline about teams being under
Yeah.
scrutiny for, like, circumventing the cap or whatever? Like, did you see that?
So I did want to find a way to talk about that. Yes, and it's ridiculous. And for those that don't know, um, the league essentially said that they're going to be scrutinizing holding players on LTIR, you know, or trading that kind of whatever the deal was, um, through to, like, essentially what they did, Lightning did to Kucherov. They were going to hold him out so that they can make a
Yes.
trade and then keep him for the playoffs. Patrick Kane did it in 2015 with the Blackhawks. Kucherov is the most recent example that I suppose that we know of. Um, Hell, the Avalanche, if they weren't fighting for their lives, they might have done it with Landeskog. Um, but yes, what I found interesting in the argument that I kept seeing over and over was, why is it going to be scrutinized for the teams trying to win right now, but the Coyotes are only paying out $40 million for their actual roster. The cap floor is like 62 million or something like that. So they're allowed to launder money and have players like Andrew Ladd and Shea Weber and whomever else on injured reserve, not LTIR, not long-term injured reserve, just to reach the cap floor and then pretty much ice an AHL team and not be competitive. And then collect picks to eventually win, I guess. Where so like I don't understand why, and the argument that I saw, this is not an original thought, but I agree with it. Why is it okay for one type of team to do it and not the other? Especially with Arizona, like they've made zero attempt to win in the last few years.
Well,
They've like
I was just
I just don't get it.
like I was just curious to know what did that mean? Like, what do you mean you were going to scrutinize these teams? Because as much as like we might not like the fact that teams are kind of taking advantage of this loophole, they're not breaking the rules.
I think that's the thing is they're not breaking the rules, and it may have just been one of those. They know the news cycle moves pretty quickly, and hey, we're gonna say this thing, and we're not really gonna look into it, and then it's just gonna go. We've already forgotten about it. Like we're late to this, so that's why we're talking about it
Good
a week
point.
later. But it's already gone. No one's talking about it. No
Yeah,
one's
good point.
no one's questioning Mark Stone. It's just that he's out. Just as an example, I don't really know what the extent of his injuries are. Maybe it is for all really bad, but I it's gone already. Like, and that's why they did it. They didn't. I don't think there was anything in a news conference. I don't think there was anything that went really in. Like, it wasn't added to the website, or it just was a Twitter post. Maybe not even from the NHL account. Maybe from the PR account. And it was just okay. This is a thing
Be
that
prepared.
yeah. Quote. We're gonna look at it. Okay, you can look at anything. They look they
Right.
they look they look at a lot of stuff, to be perfectly honest, right? Like they look at every goal. Like, okay, they're looking
Right.
at it, great. Like they haven't made the wrong call before. Like they haven't made a billion mistakes. And like,
Right.
yeah, I trust you to do the right thing. Okay. You're definitely the NHL is definitely the league that I trust to make sure that the teams aren't screwing up. Meanwhile, they're the ones putting them in the hole. They got to jump through these hoops anyway, and they're going to scrutinize, like you said, a legal thing. Like, again, if you're going to actually scrutinize it, that ship sailed. Now it's precedent. Like, this is a thing that exists in this league. You have to put a rule in place to stop it. You can't just say that. So
Right.
it may be something in the governor's meeting or future GM meetings or something that comes up. But for now, obviously, it's fine until it's not. But as far as I can tell, um, it seems okay. Um, for the Islanders, now in the Metro Division did add quite a bit. Obviously, Patrick Kane and Tarasenko to the Rangers, and actually a bunch of pieces to the Rangers. Timo Meyer to the Devils. Um, I'm sure Carolina added somebody I can't remember. Um, maybe a goaltender. I'm not. I'm
Shane Goss to spare.
That's it. Which did make a lot of sense um from the Coyotes. That's I almost said the Phoenix Coyotes, Arizona Coyotes. That made sense. And Pittsburgh, they got Michael Granlund, I think, which was a weird move. I'm not entirely sure what the end goal is there, considering he's not been great, but maybe they just didn't have a lot of options, and he was the path of least resistance to do something, considering what everyone else is doing. But part of what everyone else was doing was the Islanders getting Pierre Engvall. Um, Trying to separate what we've seen from him over the last maybe when he's played 2 or 3 games with the Islanders. What did you think of the trade at face value before he played a game with the Islanders?
Yeah, I actually really liked that deal. They didn't give up really anything for a guy who's already in the NHL and brings a couple of things that the Islanders were lacking: speed, size. Um, he's not like this offensive juggernaut. He's just a guy who can skate the puck well in transition. He's defensively sound. One of the big things that Lane Lambert was clamoring about that the Islanders lack is the ability to move the puck out of their own end cleanly, and he can do that. So I thought it was a good fit, and again for the price that they paid, like yeah, why not? Like you do that. So when when the Islanders become healthy again and Barzell and Pajot are in the lineup, he's like going to be on the third line, and that's perfect. Like right now, he's playing up
Yeah,
with
we could talk
Horvat and
about that
Lee.
in a little bit. So
Yeah,
we'll hold on that part. But I think what was a concern was all the Leaf fans saying there's a reason why he was had for the price, right? It was cheap, but there's a reason for it. He's 6'5", but he
I
doesn't play that way.
the thing about that to me is like, look, there was obviously something that the Islanders liked about him that they went out and said, yeah, well, we want this guy. Look at Toronto, like they're top to bottom, they're filled with a bunch of guys who are speed and skill. When you're put in a different situation and you're in a different system, like you have different qualities of your game that come through and show. So yeah, maybe it wasn't working for him in Toronto, but he's a better fit for the Islanders seemingly through a few games. And so yes, Toronto fans were happy to get this guy out of their system, but one person's trash is another person's treasure. So that's how I see it in this situation. Like he's playing pretty well for the Islanders. Like he's shown significant speed and the ability to play well on his own end. And he actually looks kind of good with Horvat and Lee, which again we'll talk about. But
Oh, that didn't last long.
true, but
Holmstrom was put up there, and Lambert said that it was more a function that he doesn't know the system, and it was getting late in the game, and they needed, they needed a goal. I did notice him kind of um, passing up on some hits. He had a few opportunities at the net and made a few good passes in kind of both of the games that he's played in, but he's definitely not playing his size. Like there was a in the game against Buffalo, he was coming off the half wall, trying to, and he had a pretty clear lane, but he let Oposo just kind of like bump him off the puck like pretty easily. And Oposo is a strong guy. I mean, you remember him with the Islanders. Um, he's no slouch. So I don't mean to make that assumption, but Engvall's 6'5", like 220 something. He's a big dude. It should take a little bit more than what it looked like happened, and obviously I'm watching it on TV, but it seemed too easy to me. Like he wasn't protecting the puck, he was not using his size and his reach to his advantage. He was just being a little too lackadaisical, which is what I heard from most Leaf people, um, the Leaf peepers, uh, after that trade. So I think again, there's hits in the corner that he was passing up on in the Buffalo game that I was like, he's such a big dude. Hit him. Finish your check. Like if you're going to eventually be on the third line, you have to play physical. Zach Parise cannot be out hitting you, and he's the size of Theo Fleury. You have to go out there and play your size. Get in front of the net. Be ugly. Like Islander hockey is not beautiful all the time. It's not the beautiful game type of thing from the Islanders. You got to go out there and play ugly hockey at times. So I hope he eventually gets comfortable enough, like you said, and switches over from maybe that Leaf style to the Islanders, where maybe can get that unlocked, And uh, I saw over and over that he has all the tools in the world. Hopefully, Lambert and the Islanders can unlock that from him. Additionally, because that was the only move, um, the only other move that the Islanders made. Horvat, number 14, Bo Horvat, has now played 14 games with the Islanders. He has 8 points. I believe it's something I can't remember exactly. Maybe it's 5 goals, 8 assists, or whatever. 5 goals, 3 assists, or something like that. What do you think? Kind of separating two things here as well. What do you think of the deal and the signing now? And then what do you think of his play? And was it worth all of that? Like, and do you see him kind of adding that value over the over the course of his contract. He'll be here another 8 years.
Yeah. I love Bo Horvat. I still think the deal was worth it. I think the contract will be worth it. I think, he's just an uber smart player. He plays a really smart game. He's really good in his own end, and he chips in well offensively. Now, look, he's not lighting it up like he was in Vancouver, but he was more well equipped in Vancouver with, players like Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser and Quinn Hughes and stuff like that. And right now he's missing a key component to his line in Matthew Barzell, but still, like, he's a phenom in the faceoff dot. Like, he kills penalties. He's uh, you know, battling for net for presence, and he's a really smart hockey player, like in all three zones. So I love his game. I think he's part of the reason why the Islanders are playing as well as they're playing right now. Because without him, they would be in my opinion, much worse spot than they are. Um, and again, like, once Barzell comes back, I think you're gonna see those points start to come back on the board for him. But I think he's been fantastic since he's arrived.
I agree. He's been a beast in uh, in the faceoff dot. Even and the team has been really good even without Peugeot, and that's really a testament to Cizikas and Horvat, and Nelson's no slouch. He does a pretty good job in the dot as well. He and Barzell were really clicking. They were starting to kind of get it together,
Yeah,
and it's a real shame that Barzell's still out with an injury, and it's great that they're playing well without him. I do want to touch on that specifically later. Um, but the deal and everything in the trade, what they gave up, Bavilier seems to be doing pretty well in Vancouver, even with the situation over there that in Vancouver with the way that it is. Or at least he was to start. I think he had 8 points in 8 games um, since going over there. But giving up Ratu, who I'm not sure has played an NHL game in Vancouver,
I think he's played like
plus
one
the
or two.
pick. Yeah, plus the pick, which Vancouver then traded, I believe, maybe even to Minnesota. I can't remember who they made a trade, and they already traded that pick away. So this is maybe looking worse for them than it ever will be for the Islanders, especially depending on who that pick turns out to be. Um, for whoever ultimately gets that first round pick from the Islanders. Um, but the more I watch Horvat, the more that I like him. He's a eventually I think he'll have an A for the Islanders. I think he's a leader. Um, he's a point per game this season. He's having a great year, and he's not slowed down since getting to Long Island. Um, and I think he's a huge, obviously Sorokin, the defense, and so on and so forth. For the Islanders getting to where they are right now, but I think he's a really big reason um, that they're back kind of on track. He's definitely the leader that they needed to get them to this point and um, start opening up the gap really for that playoff race.
Yeah,
Um, so we had some Q&A, and I kind of sprinkled them in here, depending on what we were talking about, and not as to not leave them to the end. Typically, we leave them to the end and we answer the questions already. So I wanted to bring up the questions ahead of time. John Filippelli's always been great, longtime listener. Always kind of puts in questions when you put a Q&A out. He asked, do you think Lou made a mistake not trading some of the vets at the trade deadline, not trading Varley? Um, he said, I think not trading Varley was the biggest mistake because they don't have many back to backs and they could ride Sorokin. Um, what do you think about that? I think there's kind of a lot to be said about it, and especially a week later, where the Islanders are and their pace the rest of the way, or what it seems to be, that opinions could change in that week. He did just ask this question earlier today, but what's your take on it? And did that change maybe from a week ago to today?
no, I feel the same way. I don't think that they should have traded him away if their plan was to make the playoffs. just because of the pure fact that look, if and again, he could play 0 games between now and then and it would still be worth it just because of the fact that if Ilya Sorokin winds up going down and getting hurt, having Semyon Varlamov as your backup, you're getting starting goaltender quality out of a quote unquote backup. So, you if you're in the playoffs and you want to, go at least to another round, you're going to need goaltending. Like when you don't have goaltending, unless you're the 2022 Colorado Avalanche, you're not going to win. Like the 2022 Colorado Avalanche were an anomaly. That's not a comparison that you can make and say like, well, they didn't have it. They also scored like 7 goals a game. Like it was insane. So you need a starting goaltender, and if again Sorokin goes down, there's something to be said about your own rental, right? Even if he does become your own rental, that's okay because again, they're gearing up for a playoff run. Clearly, at this point in the season, they believe that they can get there, and it's starting to show in the standings, right? They're collecting those points. They're believing in themselves, right? And let's see what happens when they get even healthier too. Like they're actually not far off from possibly catching the Rangers in for third in the Metro because they're kind of falling a little bit. Um, we'll see what happens there because they're getting a little bit healthier. Keandre Mills coming off of a suspension, but no, you need Varlamov in the tandem if you're going to the playoffs. They thought they were. Yes, they could have gotten something for him, but they thought it was more worth it to hold on to him and go to the playoffs, even if that meant he walked. And again, ownership wants a playoff series in this brand new building. That was part of the decision here too. So, and to sum up, he's also said he wants to stay. So I wouldn't put it past him to sign for 50% of what he's making now.
So that was exactly what I was going to say was when before the trade deadline, he was asked, do you want to be traded or what do you think about the upcoming deadline? And he said, do I want to be traded? Absolutely not. I want to stay with this team. I love this team. I want to stay here and resign.
Breaking
And
news: player comes to Long Island, wants to stay on Long Island.
yes, I mean, and it's a good team, and he's good friends with Sorokin, and they're a really good tandem. And this year, what did I say all last summer? Um, Varlamov played 31 games last year. He was 10, 17, and 2. And he needed to reverse that. He needed to find a way if he was going to play around 30 games, which I don't even think he'll get that close, honestly. He started 29 last year. He started 20 so far now, and they have 17 games left. He may play 7 more games. Especially if they're towards the end of the season, maybe he'll play a little bit more just to rest Sorokin. Although they do have some time in between games, so he may not need that. But you do want your backup goalie. That we saw Sorokin had to go in for Varlamov in his first season, um, and all of that. So it's possible. You want your goalies to have some reps. You don't want anyone going in having not played for weeks and weeks and weeks. Of course is different in the playoffs themselves, but this season it's not dazzling, but it is a reversal. He's 11-7-2, and he's his save percentage is 0.3 better. I'm sorry, his goals against is 0.3 better, and his save percentage is up 0.03, which isn't great, but the others did go almost winless in January, and it had nothing to do with the goaltending. Even when Sorokin wasn't playing at his best, I wouldn't point to those losses and say that they were either of those players' fault. But yeah, of course, 50% for Varlamov for next year to have that tandem. We've seen how important that is for all of the good teams, save for the Tampa Bay Lightning, who just ride Vasilevsky into the ground like a 1999 Toyota Camry.
Nasserman Hockey is brought to you by DraftKings. The action never ends at DraftKings Sportsbook, especially this summer. With tons of ways to bet on all your favorite sports, you can fuel your fandom and feel the heat of the season like never before. Plus, right now, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving new customers a risk-free bet at up to $1,000. That's right, make your first bet up to $1,000, and if it doesn't win, you'll get another shot to cash in. You can throw down on all major action for baseball, golf, MMA, and more. Plus, with same game parlays, spreads, money lines, over unders, and props, your betting options feel endless. You know, this summer we're going to bet on Aaron Judge, who just re signed with the New York Yankees, to hit plenty of home runs. Best of all, DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you'd like. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code THPN, make your first deposit, and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
Even going as far as to say not trading Mayfield was also good. I think that's kind of easy to say, and the defense has kind of gotten it together at this point where um they're slowly kind of coming together. Do you think that was also a good move? And even because we discussed beforehand, if that had happened, it was just a matter of assets to then go get something else, maybe whether that was an Engvall or whatever. I don't know what Mayfield would have fetched on the trade market. Was that they had a lot of depth on the back end. They had Witherspoon and um, Shalofsky and Bolduc, who all looked really good. Was Mayfield and Grant Hutton, who most recently went in for Mayfield last season, and it was pretty seamless, and he's a few years younger. Do you think that was the right move to just keep him? And this is the veteran decor and the players that we have, or was that kind of a missed opportunity to kind of make up maybe even a second round pick?
Tell you what, I think it was the right move to keep Mayfield. I think it was the wrong move to not add a defenseman. Yes, they have the depth. But if I'm not mistaken, Shane Gotts to spare went to Carolina for a draft pick,
What's his
maybe a
what's
little
his
bit more.
cap hit? I'll look it up. But
The
yeah,
the fact
that
that
may have been the problem.
the thing for me is that a lot of general managers got creative at this deadline. So cap hit wasn't even an issue if you wanted to do something like that. A lot of teams were willing to broker contracts and hold some money because of pending UFA status, yada yada. And it didn't take a ton to make these deals. Like Patrick Kane went for nothing for the Rangers. Like, and the
Or
Wild
even
wound up
Chikrin.
taking like a right Chikrin. Oh my god, that deal. Um, went for nothing. So like if you were gonna get a cheap puck mover, Shane Bear is someone that they probably should have tried to get. And look, I don't see why they couldn't have beaten the offer, right? Do you have the trade up? The compensation for
No,
Goss
but
Bear?
his cap, he's in the last year of his contract at 4.5, and his bonuses were already paid. So his like actual dollars, that they were worried about the actual dollars, is very, very low. Um, yeah, I don't know the trade up. I was looking at cap friendly, but I agree that they should have added a defenseman. It didn't need to be Gossespear. I'm sorry, it didn't need to be Chikrin, but it could have been someone like Gossespear. And the deals were not as rich as I thought, kind of anywhere from Patrick Kane to Chikrin, even Gossespear and a couple other players. It didn't seem like the market was that expensive. I think the Islanders they recognize a little bit that they don't even have that much, even the cheap stuff at a certain point to just hand out. They were pretty tapped at this point. So, like I said, I don't really know what the trade is for Gossespear, but it's entirely possible the Islanders could have got. But they went out and got Engvall, and that was a good enough move as far as depth. Hopefully,
Okay.
Barzal and Pajot can come back.
They got him for a 2026 third round draft pick.
Yeah, I think you do that. Just the pick.
Just the pick. And in 3 years. So you're looking at a
Did
50
Arizona like
point
also retain?
I don't think they did. Looking at it now, I don't think they did. No.
Wow.
But a 29-year-old puck moving defenseman who has 31 points in 52 games. That's a guy I
Yeah,
think,
that
like, okay, you want a third round draft pick in 2026 from Carolina? Well, they're in all reality probably a better team than we are. I'll offer you a 2025 third round draft pick, and it'll probably end up being higher in the draft.
yeah, that would have made a lot of sense. You know, like now looking into that and thinking about it, that makes me a little upset that they didn't try. I don't know. There's a couple. I'm not trying to make excuses for the Islanders. Um, even though I'm kind of decked out in their stuff, but we all know Islander fans are perhaps the most critical of their own team. But I will say this: they're at 45 of 50 contracts. Now, some are coming off the books this summer. They can do some other trades. Some people might just be coming back. Varlamov, Mayfield, so on and so forth. Even Engvall at this point. Um, so maybe that has something to do with it. Their reserve list is fine. They have 59 out of 90 slots on that. So I think on the high end in this league is like in the 70s. But contracts is tough, and they're 45 out of 50. I'm not exactly sure, but I think you do it right. He's the UFA. Engvall's also UFA. You just ride into the sunset. You win a cup, no one cares if they leave if afterwards, right? Like look at the Toronto
Yep,
Raptors. You know they win that, and what's his name? Kawhi Leonard is left. It's
yep.
so much easier to swallow that when you have a championship. It's that Patrick Waugh thing. As sorry, I couldn't hear him. I have Stanley Cup rings clogging my ears. I mean, it's only one, but if you can get that far, no one cares. No
Yeah,
one's
no, I
no one's thinking about that.
wholeheartedly agree.
Um, Canadian Isles fan also asked, regarding the trade deadline and then Engvall's couple of games. Based on Engvall getting benched last night, do you think it's uh, Engvall and Bailey sitting out when Pajot and Barzell return? I do want to make, just because you did touch on this before, I do want to make a distinction that, as we said, and as Lambert said, that Engvall was not benched. Yes, his ice time went down, but they were trying to score a goal, and he's learning the system. Taking him out of the lineup a little bit
Yeah.
and moving from up on that line. As much as Holmstrom's been inconsistent, um, he has shown the ability to score a goal in tough situations, and he's got good hands when he shows up. He's a lot like Engvall, at least what we've been told about Engvall. Has all the tools, just has to put it together. Is the bottom line on that, and that's
Yeah.
essentially Holmstrom as well, who doesn't always show up with that right tenacity, but they're perhaps a different conversation. Um, you started to gun. I cut you off earlier about this. What do you? So fingers crossed. Peugeot is skating. We're not sure as of right now if he's traveling with the team to Pittsburgh, or yeah, on the way to Pittsburgh. Um, Barzell is not skating yet with the team, best we know. When those two players do come back, what do you think the roster, at least what do you think the roster looks like? Because it affects the top six and the bottom six.
Yeah, you know, I've said all along that, like, look, I think that Holmstrom has been good in spurts. I think that he's also had some issues that need to be, worked on or addressed, if you will. And um, I if I were the Islanders, I wouldn't have sent Durando down. I would have sent Holmstrom down and kept Durando. I think he should have been the guy who stuck around. So if you're asking me, I think Pierre Engvall should stay in the lineup when one of those two guys come back. And you know, then you're in for a tough decision, like who's gonna come out. I could see it being Bailey, like, you know, fourth line with him on it. Like, does that work? And like, look, granted, he
I'd
scored
rather
that big
Fashing.
goal. Oh,
I guess
100%.
he scores a big goal. I think, and I just put it in our notes here. Um, Engvall, Pajot, Holmstrom slash Bailey, and then the fourth line, becomes the real fourth line again. So you
Right.
get
Like,
Koivu out of there, and
first and foremost, like, Koivu is going to come out, right? So if it's Pajot coming back, Koivu is going to come out. Ziga is going to slide down. Pajot's back on the third line, right?
Can we pause
Um,
really quickly on Koivula? He looks like horse shit. I he's been in this organization for so long. He is terrible. I
yeah,
know
he's not
I'm a
great.
beer leaguer, right? Like, I'm not in the NHL, but oh my god. Oh my god. It's so hard to watch him. He doesn't like granted, he has not played a lot of NHL games, but he just looks lost out there. Like, he can't even he can't keep up with the pace. He
Yeah,
was
no,
out
it's
there with
it's
Bailey and Holmstrom, and it was the worst line I've seen by the Islanders in years. They were so bad against the Sabres, who were, I guess, okay, but like they were getting hemmed in. It was terrible.
right. Yeah, no, I agree. Like Otto Koivula is a career AHLer, so it's clear as day. And so when I'm sorry, when Peugeot comes back, Cizikas will slide down, and Peugeot will take his spot. When when Barzell comes back, it looks like on the right wing right now, RW1 is Engvall, 2 is Palmieri, 3 is Fashing, 4 is Bailey. You could just see everybody in that pecking order just take a step down when Barzell returns. Granted, maybe Engvall drops to the line 3, and Fashing to line 4, and Palmieri stays on line 2, and Barzell takes his spot back on line 1. But that's the way I see it. Possibly going down now. Again, I'm going to advocate for, you know, when that happens, right? When Pajot's back, Martin's going to go down to the fourth line. The fourth line will return to its almost rightful place with Fashing in the mix there, and that left wing 3 spot is open. And look, I watched Durando in person the other night. Um, I've been watching his game closely, at least for the short time he was up with the Islanders, and paying attention to what he's doing down in Bridgeport. He's got I think he's played like 3 games since he's been returned, maybe 4. He's got like 3 or 4 goals. He's playing really well, and he has that speed and um electricity that this team needs in the lineup. And I just think that when he just naturally fits so well. Like
Yeah, I don't know why
I
you're not
think
switching Holmstrom and Durando because Holmstrom's waivers exempt. Just throw him down. Or if you
that's what I
have the spot
mean.
on your roster, or yeah, it doesn't look like they do, but yeah, just put Holmstrom down. Durando just had that speed and tenacity, like you said.
And he feels like a guy who some of these guys just need a chance, and when they get it, they take it. It felt like he was building the momentum on that. Like when he
Yeah.
was on an emergency recall to begin with. Then he was upgraded to a regular recall. And I was like, this is the right move. I think they're going to keep him around because of that. And then he was surprisingly one of the 3 guys that I think they sent down Koivula, Holmstrom, and Durando together before the trade deadline, which was telling me that I thought had another move in their back pocket, which they did. It was Engvall, but um,
And they
Durando
can
wound
send
up
down
staying now.
Koivula and bring Durando back up for the playoffs. Now they have a taxi squad and
Yeah,
kind of all of that, but or the Black Aces, but I mean you could do that now. And when Pajot comes back, there's just no reason to have a guy like Koivula around, but there might be a reason to have a guy like Durando. And the Islanders have desperately needed a young guy to come out of nowhere in their
yeah.
middle
I
six and just make a major impact. Like a lot of these teams, just there's a guy. It's just a random guy you never heard of until that season who comes in. It's uh like a college free agent that comes in. Who is that guy that did it for the Avalanche? He came. Was that McCarr? No, somebody had come in and like in from as a college free agent for Colorado a few years ago and just killed it. And they obviously didn't win the cup, but
It might have
the
been
Islanders
McCarr.
the Islanders just need a guy like that to just kind of push in that next level, especially
Yeah,
with the way that they're kind of waking up right now and they're returning to this team. What we said all season was like this team just lacks any tenacity at all. And Durando, as far as I can tell, is I think he has to try way harder because I don't think he has the skill, but he has the will. Is he could be what we thought or really wanted Bavilier to be. And on a third line, again, he makes nothing. It doesn't really even matter. Um, I think he's on a yeah, he's 24. So he's the same age as Bavilier. He just really has not gotten that chance in the NHL, and he makes a little bit of money. You need that player around. You need like a third liner who makes league min. Holmstrom should be that guy, and he just like has not been able to put it together on a regular basis. Where Durando really fucking did. He looked really
I
good.
yeah. No, I agree. And again, like I said, some guys just need a chance, and I felt like he was doing all of the little things right, and then doing a couple extra things that made me like go, oh, that's he's got it. Like you said, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that he doesn't have the skill. I think he has the skill, right? He doesn't have the
I mean, there's
size.
some of it there,
I'll
but
say that.
it's not like Bavilier where it was very clear like there was something there. And you saw it on a I don't want to say a regular basis, but enough where it was very clear. With him, it seems like he's got to try for everything, and that's fine. That's like the other way. They have
Yeah,
to like scrounge and scrape for every single goal. I feel like he's really got to go out there and play above his size. Talk about Theo Fleury or any of those smaller players from the '90s. You really have to go out there and give it your all um, to make an impact, and he was absolutely doing that. And they really, especially at his cap hit, I hate to bring it back to that, but you need those types of players. You just need somebody to come in that even in a few years is only going to make $2 million, or something, $1.5 million. And he might be thrilled with that just to get an opportunity, and he's got to earn it. And if Lamorall has anything to say about it, then that's exactly what will happen. Um, in general, though, the Islanders are peaking at the right time without Durando, who regardless of who's in the lineup, they're 9-3-3 in their last 15 games. Currently at a 92-point pace, currently putting them second in the second wild card, 3 points behind the Penguins. And that may change because they're playing the Penguins um, tonight as this is live, and you may be listening to this, or maybe it's after the Pittsburgh game. So that may even change, where that gap between those two teams, even with Pittsburgh's games in hand, that may change a little bit. So it's another big opportunity. The Islanders have a lot of very big games, really the rest of the way. They have 16 games left. I'm not sure there's a game that you could um, kind of chalk up as a schedule loss or anything like that. Like every single game is a big game for the Islanders moving forward, especially the teams in and around them in the playoffs. Because if the it's kind of like when you're running away from the bear, you don't need to be the fastest person, you just don't need to be the slowest. If the Islanders can be even a little quicker than Pittsburgh, the other teams around them can win. Like you don't have to scoreboard watch if you're ahead of Pittsburgh, and that's what Pittsburgh is doing now, right? They came back, they stormed back against the Columbus Blue Jackets the other night and won 5-4, which
unreal.
was heartbreaking for us anyway, and probably Columbus as well. You can, if you could kind of best them a little bit and have them battle with those teams instead of you're putting yourself in a really good position. And they're on pace for just under 95 points. So there's a 3 point gap there in the projected pace, which is important. And as Zach Parise said, the Islanders have some time between games. There's no excuse for them not to be rested and have that jump. Um, we saw them turn it on. It was a period late against the Sabres, but they did turn it on, and they were the better team, not just skill wise, but just the energy. They were at one point they had more than doubled up on shots, but they looked pretty good. Um, what's other than maybe just kind of hitting their stride and kind of coming together and maybe having to do that without Barzell, and perhaps that's answering the question for you. Has anything changed, and who's stepping up for the Islanders right now that the last 15 games have looked the way they are.
Yeah, it's funny. Lambert said it the other day, and I guess he was kind of right in the sense that I mean he's the coach, so he would know. But um, he said that the system hasn't changed, right? Like some people have been bringing up to him like, "Oh, you're playing more of a Trotzian style now," and he kind of said like, "Well, no, we've been playing like this the whole time. It's just the little details that the guys have really started to pay more attention to, and the little intricacies of the game that we've gotten better at." So there have been tweaks to the system, but it's still derived from the Trotz system that was in place. He's just trying to make it, a more fast paced and offensive, um, I guess, offensively inclined system, if you will. So, um, I know I just threw this into the notes like kind of halfway down, but one of the biggest factors for me is how good Alexander Romanov looks. He's been
He's definitely less of a liability. He's looking.
no, no, you're underselling it. He's been a beast. Like in his last 6 games, he's been a beast.
Hmm.
He's been really good in his own end. He's been moving the puck well in transition. He's now actually like chipping in a couple points here and there. Like he has 3 points in his last 6 games, which is nothing crazy. But before that, he had 3 points in his last 14 games. So the points are coming in a little more frequently. I was looking at the expected goal differential for him. First of all, the game against Buffalo the other night, he was on the ice for like 86% of the chances for. Like it was insane how well the Islanders were playing when he was on the ice. And in the last go of it, it's the stretch of 6 games, he's got like a ridiculous almost 75% expected goals for percentage. Like he's contributing to a lot more positive impacts on the ice lately than he has been in the previous like 56 games or something like that. He's paired with Ryan Pullock now. Um, I think that he's beginning to turn a corner. Like he's just been a beast. And if this is the Alexander Romanov that the Islanders are going to get, they bought low on a guy who could evolve into something. Like I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be a Norris guy, but like he could be, if this continues, you're looking at a quality top 4 guy, defensive defenseman here.
I think it's interesting that they finally did break up Pelech Pulak, because I think that was a conversation that had kind of been happening, and they Lambert was pretty insistent on keeping that pair together. So it's interesting that Romanov and Pulak are the pair that's that's working, and maybe Romanov needed that rock in Pulak, where he, instead of anchoring Dobson, which I think is what the conversation was last summer. That was at least how I saw it working.
Yeah.
It seems a little bit that maybe Romanov needed that opportunity to have somebody kind of anchor him, and maybe usher him up a little bit. And again, he's got 2 seasons. This is his third season, if I'm not mistaken. He's still a young guy. Maybe he needed a little bit more experience to play beside him than someone like Dobson, who also is kind of working on that. And Aho's been around a little bit. I know he's not terribly older than, I think maybe he's the same age as Romanov, but um that pair has been working. Um
Yeah.
if I'm remembering correctly, and that's the pair. And then Pelican and Mayfield's like the pretty good shutdown
Great.
team, tandem. So I think that all ultimately works out. I worry about mobility, but maybe that's,
Well,
Romanov can skate. He's a young guy, and um, Dobson's got some wheels that, at least going into the offensive zone. It's always a little harder to skate back than it is when you have the puck going the other way. But and then Pelican Mayfield, I think it's a tough shutdown pair. I
yeah, no,
think
I agree.
ultimately that works out.
But to your point, mobility is a little bit of an issue, and this is why I said if they were gonna get anybody, it should have been Shane friggin' Gostisbehere for a draft pick in the 3rd round in 3 friggin' years.
Yeah, and that player, if they're even a good player, what's that, like 6 years away?
You
That
know what
draft is
the
in 3 years, and then it's gonna take them 3 years to develop, like at a minimum. That's a
do you
long
know what
time.
do you know what the chances are of like a 3rd round pick playing 100 games in the NHL?
I don't know the odds. Anecdotally low.
Yeah, it's like You have like an 8% chance.
That's crazy. It's
Right.
almost I don't even know how they value that when you make a trade
Like
in the
after the
in the
first
NHL.
round, anyone after the first round is like a 14% chance to like make the NHL.
That's nuts. And depending on who you're getting drafted by, that may never even happen. A lot of the Islanders draft picks over the last like decade. Um, look at Dal
Haven't.
Cole, look at Hosang, look at
Yeah.
even
Imagine if all those
Bavilier. You
picks
know,
hit.
like
If all those picks hit, how different would this team look right now?
if one pick hit, like
Yeah.
obviously Dobson, Barzell, notwithstanding, um,
Rome. Need a rider.
Strom. I mean, I they did have really good seasons without them or with them. Even even Dal Cole, even though he wasn't the player that
No, yeah,
they
they
really
worked
needed
out
him
for
to
other
be.
teams.
Oh, I mean, even who's on Philly now? Was that Dal Cole? No.
No, Bellows.
Bellows, even Bellow like, God, it's nauseating when you go back. Every once in a while, I'll do that on Hockey Reference and just, like, I don't even some of the players, like, you never even heard of,
Yeah.
um, and I feel like we're pretty close. Like, we're no Mitch Andersons, but, like, we're pretty close. We know first round picks, and for the most I'm like, I don't know who any of these players are. Like, they never even sniffed the NHL, and then the ones that did, again, even say I don't really even wanna look at that page, but save for Barzell and Dobson, like, who really made the team and stuck around?
Right.
Bavilier, and he wasn't even what we fully needed him to be. Not even just from draft position, just any kind of consistency. He certainly was in the playoffs, but not in the regular season. And the Islanders only had 2 or 3 playoff runs with him, or maybe, sorry, 4 playoff runs with him, which is a lot, but not enough to obviously not make him a trade asset, um, and want to keep him around. But either way, um, anything else on that front stepping up? Obviously, Sezikis and Fashing have been a great pair. They connected for a goal, even if it was not an accident, but not directly on purpose, with Fashing hitting the side of the net and the puck just going right to Sezikis and Ukko Pekka kind of being out of position a little bit, and the puck sneaked through the 5 hole to get that second goal for the Islanders. Palmieri looks good.
Yeah, he looks
Uh,
great.
he's stayed pretty consistent, and again, he's kind of crash and bang. He's not as silky as maybe even he wants to be, and he's in his 30s, so that's it's bound to happen. But he's still got the energy. Every once in a while, he's really pulling out the stops with some moves and being able to move the puck around, and he and Nelson seem to really connecting, and obviously Parise is a beast. So if not for Sorokin, maybe the best Islander this season, honestly, and maybe the last 2 seasons as far as consistency is concerned. Um, and it's because Barzell's kind of been all over the map for me, and I've had some criticism for him, but Parise seems to be not slowing down and playing well with Nelson and Palmieri. Anything else on that front for you that's kind of standing out?
No, I think you're right. Like Palmieri looks really good. Lee and Nelson continue to play well. We spoke about how much we love Horvat. I mean, like Hudson Fashing is another guy who like crash and bang, but also like he does things like he did last night where he scores game winning goals. Which can we talk about that game winning goal real quick? Because there was a lot of controversy about if it was a kicking motion or not.
Yeah, go for it. I
So
had like 2 seconds of thoughts on it, but
yeah,
go ahead.
so like this, there's a very clear difference between a distinct kicking motion and like what he did, and like there's an argument to be made here where like last night, when I was covering the Devils, um, Timothy Liljegren, he was playing the puck with his stick, and when he like kind of tucked his elbow, hit Miles Wood right in the face. It should have been an elbowing call, but it went uncalled, right? And the debate was like, well, even accidents get called as penalties because you're not supposed to do it. And right, I'm there for that, right? I hear that side of the argument. However, right, Hudson Fashing, when he received that pass, wasn't attempting to kick the puck, right? He was just attempting to stop the puck. Like his momentum was carrying him, right? He just lifted his leg. So he wasn't making a kicking motion. He was just his momentum was being carried with him, and the puck happened to deflect off of his leg and go into the net. There was no kicking motion. His body was just moving in that direction. So like and it all sounds so silly because this is what replays do, and when they slow things down, it does it no justice, because it just looks even worse than it actually was in real time. Because Hudson Fashing wasn't playing soccer; he's not Pele out there where he was trying to make this ridiculous soccer like kick to score a goal. It was too fast for
Right.
that kind of a thing to unfold. Nobody's thinking the game that quickly unless your name is Connor McDavid. Um, so to me, it was pretty clear that he was just trying to receive the pass with his skate, as most players do, because it wasn't a perfect pass. And it just happened to, go in the back of the net. And it looks like Toronto agreed. So, like,
Yeah,
what's the argument here?
there were a lot of instant reactions kind of going both ways. Ultimately, it made more sense after, I don't want to say an explanation, but maybe just the broadcast kind of um explaining it a little bit better. I wasn't sure. I kind of seen those go both ways. It did, again, you're right in that the replay and the slow motion definitely doesn't do it justice, in that it does kind of look like a kick. But I don't think, where the only thing I'll disagree with you on is, I don't think he was trying to get it to his stick, because there was no space to do that. The puck was too high. It was going to hit him in the thigh, and then it hit him in the middle of his calf after he raised his leg, or in his shin. I think he was just trying to redirect it. I think it was just, I'm gonna get my body in front of it and whatever happens. And it happened to go in the net. There was no space there. Um, unless he just redirected it into the net. Um, I was surprised because it was overturning the on ice call. That was the concern for me. It was, I don't think it's a kick either, but I can understand how it's tough because they're only going to slow it down to look at the details. That was ultimately what I didn't think would work. But seems as if that wasn't too big of an issue, because it wound up being a goal, and it stood to be the game winner for the Islanders. So,
Yep.
however, whatever his intention was, I think is irrelevant. I am, like I said, I am surprised that they overturned the on ice call. I thought that was really hard to do. And given that they've, I feel like, made mistakes, as you said, sometimes they miss things, the Toronto, whatever, that didn't seem like they would just get it right. They very rarely take that much time and go through that and then actually get it right. It's usually just like a, s- a split hair difference in something. And you're like, that could still be either way. Like, I don't know what kind of conclusive evidence that you have one way or another, but either way counts as a goal. Um, I do want to end on the Islanders and the Sabres and the ESPN broadcast. The ESPN analysts during the show, I don't know if you caught this, had some
Yep.
harsh words for the Islanders. But I do want to preface this with PK Subban then tweeted out afterwards that he did choose in the beginning of the broadcast, who some fans may not have seen, that he did choose the Islanders and talk them up quite a bit um, at the beginning of the broadcast, choosing them to be in the wild card spot, and saying that they play playoff hockey all year round. Um, what did you think? Kind of on both sides of that. What did you think of the comments when PK is just being a smartass and falling asleep, and faking falling asleep? What do you think about that? Are
I
we over
think
it?
that I think that we complain that there's no personality in the game, and then when somebody shows an ounce of personality, we complain that they're showing personality when it affects the team that they like.
I wish we could just end the show right on that. Yeah, that's perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, he's poking fun at us, at Islander fans and the team, and um, I think that's spot on.
Like
He's a
I
little personality.
understand, right? Like I understand that like you're like, oh, that's my team. Like, don't poke fun at my team, but don't turn around tomorrow and be like, oh, boring, boring NHL doing boring NHL things on ESPN when it's about the Blackhawks. Like you
Yeah.
have to like if look, you do are any Islander fans innocent? Have none of you ever poked fun at another team? I mean, especially the New York Rangers. Like I get it, rivalries exist, but the fact of the matter is that like you want more fun in the game. Like don't complain when people do things that are funny and draw attention to the game. Like, oh, we're supposed to be growing the game. Yeah, personalities grow the game. And like that's what PK Subban is. That's what Ryan Callahan was trying to be. You don't
Yeah.
like it? Flip the channel.
And it's not for you, right? Yes, they're making fun of your team in this particular instance, but adding that personality, and even you can go as far as to say Wes McCauley or even Butchergross.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of deep into podcasts and writing and media um, like to poke fun at Butchergross and even Wes McCauley. It's just not for you, man. It's just not for you.
And I'll say this too. I think that the first time that this happened, where the Islanders, I guess game itself, the system, the team was called boring. I think Islander fans reacted right the first time. They embraced it, printed the T-shirts. Right. Carolina did the same thing. Bunch of jerks. Where did that start? Right. Started on a broadcast. Bunch of jerks embraced it. Right. Don't don't start complaining because again, you want the game to be more exciting. You want more fun. And then the second somebody does something funny, you're gonna complain about it. Come on, let's be
Yeah,
better, people. Let's have thicker skin.
I definitely agree. That doesn't make as good of a t-shirt, but thick skin does not make as good of a t-shirt idea than boring hockey does. But I understand that's not the point. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think it's just not for you, and all that stuff. Like the Butch Gross stuff is really annoying. I don't enjoy it. It's almost disappointing, honestly, and it's ruining the nostalgia of the whole thing because I really did really enjoy it when I was younger and as a kid, and I wake up and watch NHL Tonight and blah blah blah. But yeah, I really don't enjoy it as an adult, or maybe it's worse than it was, and it was never quite this kitschy. Even Steve Levy, just because I don't watch ESPN, so these personalities kind of come on and all this stuff. Yeah, it's is the Wes McCauley thing. Is it cringy? Absolutely. But I don't care. At least it's something. The players aren't going to do it on the ice, so you may as well have it in the broadcast. Um, and maybe it attracts somebody. Maybe you start a rivalry with another fan because they agree with Subban and they just hate the Islanders, and that's like half the fun. You hate. There's 31 other teams you hate. Like you're just not everyone's going to be a fan of the thing that you like. In this particular case, it's yes, I completely agree. Um, Big game in Pittsburgh on Thursday or tonight, whenever you're listening to this. Um, Hopefully they can pull out another win and continue to take advantage of their days off moving forward. The weeks are going to go really quick. The end of March is going to be here before we know it, and they have a few games in the beginning of April. I'm hoping to catch one myself in person at UBS. Hopefully, it's in a playoff push. Um,
Big stretch coming up. Like Pittsburgh, you have to beat tomorrow or tonight. Washington, that like they've thrown the towel in. Beat them. LA is a good test, but you have to beat Anaheim. You have to beat San Jose. Because then you get Toronto, you get Buffalo again, you get New Jersey again. Doesn't get easier.
it doesn't.
Although
Um,
I will say this: the strength of schedule for the rest of the season amongst the wild card teams is actually in favor of the Islanders over the majority of the rest. I think they were like second best strength of schedule
Yeah, if they went
compared
10 and
to
6, I think they still do pretty well depending on who they beat.
yeah.
Even if it was just the teams below them in the standings that they beat, which is the teams they need to, right? They don't necessarily need to beat the teams ahead of them outside of Pittsburgh, who they play once or twice more, including the game
Pitts,
on Thursday.
Pittsburgh is just once.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it's Washington that's twice, but that is a less relevant. But um, yeah, they sold off, and they're interesting, and um, the Torontos and the Devils and LA are really good tests. And that West Coast trip's not going to be easy. They do have some time in between, and they play the Capitals this Saturday. So they play the Capitals 3 times for the season. And those are always tough games. There's a
Yeah.
little bit, I don't want to say there's a rivalry there, but they're always spirited games. And it could be 6 points that the Islanders can just kind of put in the bag there. And then yeah, they have a tough time going on that West Coast trip. That's never really easy, but it's their last really big road trip um, of the season. So it's a test for them. I think the rest of the season is going to be like that. So um, our shows will be interesting. Hopefully, we'll have a lot to talk about over the next 6-7 weeks um, before hopefully the playoff run. We've had playoff runs in uh, 2 out of 3 seasons. Hopefully, we can make it a 3 out of 4 and go deep into the spring with plenty of Islander hockey to watch and talk about here. Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at Nesman Hockey. You can find James' work at The Fourth Period. Make sure you subscribe to Isles Fix. Pick up the new book. Check out the article on NHL.com. Hopefully, we'll have Mr. Joe Bono on soon. And like I said, subscribe to their daily newsletter. James, bring us home, buddy.
Until next time, all. Let's go Islanders.